This video either may or may not end up being one of the most controversial videos I've ever posted on my channel, because when it comes to rating how good weapons are in PUBG, a lot of people seem to get really passionate about their opinion. What one player might think is complete trash, another player may absolutely love. And I think we're going to be seeing a lot of that contrast in today's video. So what we're going to be doing, guys, is looking at the top 10 most underrated weapons in PUBG. These are what I think to be some of the best options that you can run if you want to do well in this game, but they're going to be weapons that are maybe a little bit overshadowed by some other ones in the game, or are just kind of low rated by the community as a whole, but I still think that are very, very good. Now, of course, if you guys don't mind, before we start the video, if you don't mind dropping a thumbs up on the video, that would be absolutely amazing. Subscribe, of course, if you are brand new to the channel and this is the first video you've ever seen of mine. And also, the day this video goes live, guys, I'm streaming right now over on my Twitch channel, so if you want to come hang out with me and other people in the PUBG community, check out the top link in the description, go follow my Twitch channel, and I'll see you over there for the stream. Now, this list is going to be quite interesting because the way that I'm defining underrated is some of the particular guns in the game that just get overshadowed by maybe another version of it that's slightly better statistically, but that doesn't make the other one obsolete, essentially. So keep that in mind. That's the framework for kind of judging what are underrated and what's not. So coming today at our number 10 spot, I'm going to give straight to the Scarl. Now, this one is honestly one of the most defining and iconic guns in the game, a fan favorite by a lot of people, but it's also overshadowed by the M4 entirely. As most PUBG players know, the M4 statistically just kind of outbeats the Scar in almost everything. I mean, the Scar and M4 have the same as far as damage, bullet speed, that kind of thing. Where they differ is their recoil patterns and also their rate of fire. The M4 just simply shoots faster, and that means with the same damage, the M4 just has an overall quicker DPS. And unfortunately, this causes a lot of people to just completely skip out on the Scar in favor of the M4 always. I mean, I gotta say, I do this a lot as well. I mean, I prefer the M4 because it does have these overall statistical advantages, but that doesn't mean the Scar is bad by any means. It's also, I would argue the Scar is easier to control than the M4, so maybe newer players might prefer this to the M4. I've suggested in the past that you should very, very slightly increase the damage of the Scar, just so where if you juxtapose it next to the M4, you could have a weapon that's slower firing but hits a little bit harder and has higher damage, or you could have that just quicker fire rate but maybe slightly lower damage, and it creates an interesting dynamic. But moving on, and coming in today at the number 9 spot is going to be the DP28. Now, unfortunately, I feel like for a majority of players, this gets written off as just kind of like a mid-tier weapon, not only due to the fact that it doesn't appear on every map, so it's not as common to see on the battlefield, but also it does look and feel kind of clunky as a weapon. But when you're able to get past the somewhat awkward properties that the DP28 has, you know, such as the big dinner plate magazine on top that only holds very oddly 47, and the lower bipod that comes out when you prone, you figure out that this weapon is actually so versatile, it's insane. It's great because the fire rate is just quick enough where in close quarters, it still has an extremely high DPS and is so dangerous. Even in distances that are probably more better equipped for SMGs, it's still great there. And then at a distance with the scope and even laying down with the bipod, it is so steady, it's unbelievable. I truly believe that it is another viable alternative to a DMR if you can't get one. But of course, with LMGs, the downside comes that you really can't put any other attachments on it besides an optic. If that had been a thing, then I feel like the LMGs, and especially the DP28, would get a lot more love in the community, because with the customization, players really like that sort of stuff, and I think that's the one thing holding LMGs back, is the fact that you can't really do anything with them. And while I might think the DP28 is a criminally underrated gun, that doesn't take away from the fact that it is absolutely excellent. Moving on, coming in today at the number 8 spot, we have the Tommy gun. The Tommy has had quite the journey in PUBG's history. It went from being an actual god tier weapon all the way down to trash tier for a long time, and then now recently in PUBG, it's been kind of kicked back up to even, I would say, average or even very good. With the recent SMG buff, the entire nature of the Tommy has been completely redesigned, and as we all know, the Vector and the UMP really seem to get the most spotlight as being the best SMGs in the game, at least at one point or another, but the Tommy gun has always kind of fallen behind. Those ones seem to be maybe a bit more competitive, but that doesn't mean the Tommy gun is bad, and it absolutely shreds in the current build of the game. What really causes the Tommy gun to be underutilized and thus underrated is the fact that it also is somewhat lacking in customization. Now, the only problem is that you can have underbarrel attachments, you can even have a magazine attachment, but you can't equip any sights. When you're given other SMG options like the Vector, which has all of those attachment options and more, and just has a wicked high DPS, the choice becomes pretty clear. With that being said, though, the Tommy gun can really take you by surprise if you're not paying attention. I would say it's still better as an early game weapon, but if you haven't played with it in a while, consider picking it up again, and it may surprise you. Coming in today at the number 7 spot, we have the classic Deagle. Now, this is honestly one of the only pistols in the entire game that I feel like is worth keeping around. In my games, I really consider this to be the exception to the pistol rule. Normally, I never carry around any third gun because I feel like it's unnecessary, but whenever I find the Deagle, I'll pick it up and just keep one magazine in it. No extra ammo is really required, so it doesn't take up any unnecessary inventory space, but it's really solid at finishing off down players and even tagging people up, maybe around a tree that are one shot. There's no doubt about it that it's a situational kind of gun. It's not going to be something that's going to beat out, ARs and SMGs at close range just in straight on battles, but it's unbelievably good at doing its job when you need it most. Coming today at the number 6 spot is going to be the Mini 14. And I gotta say, I really love the Mini, but I do still feel that it is at least somewhat underrated by the community, as a lot of people will prefer bolt action rifles over this. And to be quite honest, I think to some degree they're right. This doesn't really compete with bolt actions at their job. If you're going up against a Kar 98 in just like a, a peaking battle, it's not going to be good for you. Where the Mini really shines, however, is in big open field battles. If you're fighting, an entire squad where there's not a lot of cover going on, maybe there's a lot of distance, a bolt action isn't honestly optimal for that situation, and the Mini is probably going to serve you much better because of its ease of use. The way the bullets are so quick, it's easy to land multiple. It's a very forgiving weapon. That's literally one of the best things and the best attributes that the Mini has. And something else that's worth noting is the Mini can be paired with virtually any other weapon type in the game, and the synergy works out great. The Mini is a huge sleeper pick if you ask me. Moving on though, coming in today at the number 5 spot, we have the AKM. Now I've got an interesting relationship with this weapon. When I started playing PUBG, this was my absolute favorite. It was my go-to weapon out of anything in the entire game, and I still truly feel that this is one of the most underrated guns in the game because it can be mastered. A lot of players tend to stay away from this gun for a few different reasons. Its recoil can be very difficult to manage if you don't know what you're doing. It simply just doesn't also have that faster fire rate that the barrel M762 has, and unfortunately it's kind of like the same dynamic between the M4 and the Scar as with the AK and the barrel. However, that doesn't mean the AK, once again, is a bad weapon. A very skilled AKM player versus a moderate barrel player, the AK is going to win every single time, despite that having slightly lower damage per second. Another factor that contributes to its players passing over is its somewhat lack of customization. You can put an optic on it, a barrel attachment, and also a magazine, but as far as grips and stocks, it doesn't really have any of that going on, so a lot of people tend to avoid it because of those. Moving on though, coming in today at the number 4 spot is one of my favorite guns in the entire game, and it is criminally slept on, the MP5. If for whatever reason you've never used the MP5, it is only on Vikendi, unfortunately. If this was on every map, it would just be insane, but this is basically an alternative Vector in my opinion, and also I would even argue it could be better than the Vector in some cases. I'm not really sure what it is about the MP5 that I love so much. Maybe it's its customization options that it has, maybe it's the rate of fire, maybe it's the way the recoil pattern is. There's something that's so satisfying about using the weapon, and I can't quite put my finger on exactly what that thing is, but the MP5 is unbelievably good at being a Vector alternative and just being a great gun as a whole, and I don't think it gets enough attention as it should. I really look at the MP5 as being the SMG equivalent to the M4. Versatility and just competitive capability that it has is simply unmatched by many of the other SMGs that are currently in the game. And with the new patch that recently buffed them, the MP5's gotten even better, so it's wonderful. Coming in now at number 3 is the VSS. Now this one's sort of a weird one to approach because there are aspects about the VSS that I actually think are overrated. For example, its competitive viability, I really don't think that has a lot going on with it, but its overall utility in casual matches cannot be understated. And also, as a side note, I think the VSS recently got a shadow buff. As I was playing with it, either for this gameplay and even just in games past, I really feel like the horizontal and somewhat vertical recoil has been reduced. And not only did I notice it, but a lot of players in the community kind of picked up on that as well. And as far as I'm aware, they didn't mention about any kind of recoil patch for the VSS. I don't know, it just felt kind of different to me, and like in a good way. But I think the VSS, there are aspects again that are criminally underrated about it. But as far as being a competitive weapon, I wouldn't quite give it that. But at the end of the day, it is still an absolute noob sweeper. At the end of the day, I still consider the VSS to be somewhat underrated, although I do agree that there's aspects that may be a bit overhyped on it. Winding down here and coming in at the number 2 spot is the SLR. Now, honestly, guys, I've told you time and time again, I believe that this is one of the best guns in the game now, but unfortunately, it's overshadowed by the Mark 14. As time goes on, I'm starting to draw a lot more similarities between these two weapons. The SLR is kind of what the Mark 14 does, except obviously without the full auto capability, the bipod, and also the recentering speed that the Mark 14 has. That's the thing that makes it so good, is the fact that it recenters almost instantly, so you can hit another shot shot directly on target again. And the SLR can do that to some degree, but it kicks a lot more, and the recenter isn't quite as accurate as the MK is. And it also is lacking that full auto capability, but you can fast fire the SLR even in single fire, and it's relatively accurate if you know how to control it. At this point in time, I feel like it is objectively better than the SKS, just when it comes to how effective it's going to be in the majority of situations you'll find yourself in PUBG, the SLR is always very handy to have. But finally, guys, coming in today at the #1 spot, you may or may not have expected this one, but I'm going to give it to the Winchester 94. I told you guys, man, and many people agree that the new scope that just got added onto this weapon is an absolute game changer. As most of you guys know, the Winchester recently got added its own unique scope, and because of the high damage and even quick fire rate that the Winchester has, this is kind of like a almost semi-auto Kar 98. The scope that comes with it is incredibly clean as well. I wish we could have this just on regular weapons, but I really feel like it's going to take the player base a long time to kind of figure out and catch on that the Winchester is great now. From being a weapon that just got passed on over almost everything to being something that is regarded as even a high tier weapon is such a shift for the community, and I think it's going to take a while to break out of that underrated vibe. Giving the Winchester its own scope though was a very good option in my opinion. It's just like, I don't want any weapons in the game to be obsolete. I want them to be functional in their own right, and they really seem to hit the mark with this Winchester thing. So that is going to be, guys, my top 10 list of the most underrated weapons in PUBG. Let me know in the comment section if you agree with it, if you think I've missed anything. Let me know what you believe is the most underrated weapon in the entire game. Also, if you guys enjoyed the video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up before you go. Subscribe if you're brand new, of course. You guys have been the best. Thank you so much. Make sure you go follow me on Twitch. Link will be down below in the description. I'm streaming right now over on my channel, so make sure you come hang out over there. But I'll see you guys for the streams. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you all on the next live stream or the next video. Take it easy, and peace out.